Marina Volkova stopped believing in God the winter her daughter starved to death. She stopped believing in devils the night she saw her neighbor's corpse stand up and walk away. In Leningrad, 1942, the temperature hit -40. The dead outnumbered the living 3-1. They lay in the streets, frozen solid, waiting for spring burial. But some of them didn't wait. Some of them moved. This is what happens when a city becomes a mass grave, when cold preserves what should rot, and when 872 days of siege break not just bodies, but the laws of nature itself. Officer Dmitry Volkov wrote down the exact time, 3:47 a.m. He had to. No one would believe him otherwise. February 17th, 1942. Nevsky Prospect. Temperature, -38 Celsius. Cold enough that his breath froze in his lungs. Cold enough that the dead stayed frozen solid for months. The body had been there for 3 days. He knew because he'd walked past it 18 times. 6 patrols, 3 times each shift. A woman, maybe 30 years old. Frozen on her side outside the bakery on the corner, one arm stretched toward the door she never reached. Her coat was thin, wrong for winter. People wore everything they owned now, layered until they could barely move. She must have been caught without time to go home. Maybe she'd thought she could make it. Maybe she'd been desperate enough not to care. Volkov had stopped looking at her face after the first night. The eyes were open, frosted over like windows, but open, always watching the door. He was filling out his patrol log when he heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of the wind, a space in the air where something moved. He looked up. The woman was standing, not getting up, not rising, just suddenly vertical, as if she'd been standing all along and he'd somehow missed it. Her arm was still outstretched, still reaching for the door, but now her legs were beneath her, stiff and straight. Volkov's pencil fell from his hand. It hit the ice with a crack that seemed too loud. The woman's head turned toward the sound. The movement was wrong. All of it was wrong. Her neck made a sound like breaking branches, like ice splintering on the neva. Her frosted eyes didn't blink. Couldn't blink. They were frozen solid. But they pointed at him now. He couldn't breathe. Forgot how. Then she took a step. Her leg didn't bend. The knee stayed locked, rigid, and she swung it forward like a pendulum. Her bare foot, God, her foot was bare, blue-black with frostbite, came down on the ice. The other leg followed. Same mechanical swing, same locked knee. She was walking. Volkov found his voice. Stop. She didn't stop, didn't even pause. Just kept that stiff, pendulum walk, one locked leg after another, moving down Nevsky Prospect away from him, away from the bakery. Her arms stayed at her sides, frozen in place. Only her legs moved. He followed her. Didn't decide to. His legs just moved. 50 meters. 100. She turned down a side street, and he turned with her. She walked to an apartment building. They climbed the 3 steps to the entrance one at a time, like a child learning stairs. Her frozen hand touched the door handle. Then she collapsed. Not fell. Collapsed. Like a puppet with cut strings. One moment she was standing, the next she was pieces. Her body didn't bend or crumple. It broke apart. An arm separated at the shoulder. Her head rolled. Everything frozen so solid that the impact shattered her. Volkov stood there for 5 minutes, maybe 10. When he could move again, he checked the pieces. The skin was hard as wood. No warmth, no breath, no pulse, nothing that suggested life. But he'd watched her walk. He reported it. Of course he reported it. Went straight to the station, filed a formal incident report. His captain read it twice. How long since you've eaten, Volkov? I have my rations. That's not what I asked. Volkov didn't answer. The captain slid the report into his desk drawer. Hunger does things, makes you see things. You're off duty for 48 hours. Rest, eat, don't talk about this. But you saw a starving woman who got up to find food and died in the attempt. That's what you saw. That's what happened. Are we clear? Volkov nodded. But 3 days later, a fire warden named Chesnikov saw one too. Then a nurse. Then a party official. Then more. By the end of February, there were 12 reports. All of them filed. All of them buried. All of them describing the same impossible thing. The dead were walking in Leningrad. And Dr. Anya Sokolova was about to find out why. Four months earlier, Leningrad had been beautiful. Dr. Anya Sokolova remembered that now only in pieces. The way morning light hit the Neva River, the smell of bread from the bakery near her apartment, her son Mikhail's laugh when she came home from the hospital. Small things. They felt like they'd happened to someone else. September 8th, 1941. That's when the ring closed. German forces north, south, east. The Finns blocking the north. Lake Ladoga to the west. Frozen solid half the year, impossible to cross the other half. 3 million people trapped in a city that couldn't feed them. Anya had been a physician for 11 years. She'd seen death. She understood it. The body was a machine, and when the machine stopped, that was the end. Simple. Factual. She'd explained it to hundreds of families. Then the rations were cut. First to 400 grams of bread per day, then 300, then 250. By November, 125 grams. A slice. One slice of bread mixed with sawdust and wallpaper paste because there wasn't enough flour. That was survival. That was everything between living and dying. Mikhail got sick in October. Just a fever at first, normal childhood fever. But his body had no reserves left, no fat to burn, no strength to fight. He died on October 23rd, weighing less than half what he should. He was 7 years old. Anya held him for 3 hours before her husband Victor pulled her away. They buried him in a mass grave because there was no room anywhere else. No coffins, no ceremony. Just a body among bodies and a number in a ledger. After that, she stopped going home. Stayed at the hospital. Worked 18-hour shifts, 20-hour shifts, until exhaustion made her forget his face for whole minutes at a time. Victor stayed in the apartment. She saw him once a week, maybe. They didn't talk about Mikhail. Couldn't. By December, the hospital was death's waiting room. They came in frozen, literally frozen. You couldn't take their pulses because their wrists were solid ice. Couldn't check their pupils because their eyes had frosted over. The ones who were still alive, barely, you could tell by the fog of breath. Tiny wisps of vapor in the cold air. That's all that separated the living from the dead. Breath. The bodies piled up. First in the morgue, then in the hallways, then outside in the courtyard because there was nowhere else to put them. The ground was frozen too hard to dig graves. The crematorium had no fuel. So they stayed, frozen solid, preserved perfectly by the cold. Anya walked past 63 corpses every day on her way into the hospital. She'd counted them once, then stopped counting. They didn't decay, didn't smell. The cold saw to that. At -30, -35, bacteria couldn't grow. Flesh couldn't rot. They just lay there, frozen in whatever position they died in, waiting for spring. She learned to not see them, learned to step over outstretched arms and look past open eyes. Everyone did. Death wasn't shocking anymore. It was weather. It was furniture. It was normal. Her colleague, Dr. Kasparov, mentioned it one night in December. They were sharing a cigarette in the supply room, one cigarette between them because that's all they had. And he said, "I saw a woman die on Sadovaya Street this morning. Just sat down on a bench and stopped. I walked past her on my way back 3 hours later. She was still there, still sitting, like she was waiting for a tram." Anya exhaled smoke. "Did you check her?" "She was frozen solid. Dead hours, probably." "Then why mention it?" Kasparov was quiet for a moment. "Because when I walked past again at sunset, she was gone." "Someone moved her." "Maybe." "What else would it be?" He didn't answer, just took the cigarette back and smoked it down to nothing. That was December 15th, the first time Anya heard about bodies that moved. She dismissed it. Kasparov was exhausted, hallucinating from hunger maybe. The mind did strange things when it was starving. But 3 days later, a nurse mentioned something similar. Then an orderly. Then a patient who'd been coherent enough to walk to the hospital said he'd seen a frozen corpse stand up near the Moika River. Anya told them all the same thing. Hunger hallucinations, stress delusions. The siege was breaking their minds. It happened. It was documented. Perfectly explainable. She believed that right up until the night she saw one herself. But first, there were the reports. 12 of them. 13. 20. All describing the same impossible thing. All ignored by the authorities. All dismissed as mass hysteria. Anya started keeping notes. Not because she believed it. Because she was a scientist, and scientists documented patterns. Even impossible ones. Especially impossible ones. The reports all said the same thing. The bodies moved at night, in the coldest hours, below -30. They walked stiff-legged, mechanical, like their joints had frozen solid. They didn't respond to voices, didn't react to people. Just walked, always in the same direction, always toward home. The first witness Anya interviewed was a woman named Klavdia Petrova, breadline worker, 43 years old, though she looked 70. They all did now. Hunger aged you decades and months. They met in the hospital's basement storage room. Quiet, private. Klavdia wouldn't talk anywhere else. "You'll think I'm mad." "I'm a doctor," Anya said. "I've heard everything." "Not this." Klavdia's hands shook as she spoke, not from cold, from something else. "There's a pile of bodies behind the bread distribution center. Has been since November. We're supposed to move them, but where? Everywhere's full. So they stay. I see them every morning. Same faces, same positions. I know them all now." She stopped, swallowed hard. 3 days ago, one of them wasn't there anymore. A man. I remember him because he died reaching for the door. Hands stretched out, frozen like that. I'd stepped over that hand for 2 weeks. Someone finally moved him. That's what I thought. But then I saw him. Where? Walking down Litany Prospect. 2 blocks away. Same clothes, same frozen hands stretched out. Walking. Anya wrote it down. "You're certain it was the same man?" "I saw his face every day for 2 weeks. Yes, I'm certain." "Did you approach him?" "I tried." Called out. He didn't turn, didn't stop, just kept walking. His legs didn't bend right, like he was on stilts, stiff. And his feet. She stopped. His feet were bare, frostbitten black. I could hear them cracking against the ice with each step. Where did he go? I followed him to an apartment building on Nevsky. He stopped at the entrance, stood there for maybe 5 minutes. Then he just fell apart, like ice breaking. I went to check, and there was no warmth, no breath, nothing. He was frozen solid, had been dead for weeks. Anya closed her notebook. Hunger can cause vivid hallucinations, visual distortions. It's well documented. I'm not hallucinating. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying your mind is trying to cope with. Talk to Yuri Volkov, NKVD fire warden. He saw one too. That made Anya pause. NKVD officers didn't admit to hallucinations, couldn't afford to. Any sign of mental weakness meant reassignment, or worse. She found Volkov 2 days later. He was reluctant at first, but when she mentioned Klavdia's report, something shifted in his face. What did she tell you? That she saw a corpse walking. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. December 19th, building fire on Zagorodny Prospect. We pulled out 4 bodies, placed them on the street. Standard procedure. I was filling out the report when I heard footsteps. Go on. One of the bodies was walking away. A woman. She'd died of smoke inhalation. I'd checked her myself. No pulse, no breathing. Skin already cooling. But she was walking. Not running from the fire. Just walking. Down the middle of the street. What did you do? Followed her. She walked for 3 blocks. Turned into a courtyard. Stopped at a specific door. Her door, I think. She stood there, frozen, hand on the handle, until she collapsed. Did you report it? Volkov laughed. Bitter. I reported it. My supervisor told me to stop talking. Said if I mentioned it again, he'd have me evaluated for mental fitness. And the body? Gone by morning. They all are. That's the pattern. They walk at night. By sunrise, they're gone. Removed. Destroyed. I don't know. But there's never evidence by morning. Anya interviewed 6 more witnesses over the next week. A nurse, a party official, 2 soldiers, a school teacher, an engineer. None of them knew each other. None of them could have coordinated their stories. But the details matched. All the bodies walked at night, all during the coldest hours, below -30. All moved with that same stiff, mechanical gait. Legs locked, arms frozen at their sides. None of them responded to voices or touch. And they all walked to specific places, homes, workplaces, somewhere that mattered. The nurse, Tatiana Gordova, had seen 3. She was gaunt, hollow-eyed, but absolutely certain. The first one was a soldier, died in the hospital from frostbite. We put him in the hallway with the others. Next morning he was gone. I thought someone had moved him for burial. Then I saw him outside the military barracks on Smolny, just standing there, frozen solid. His uniform still had the hospital tag on it. Did anyone else see him? His whole unit. They recognized him, tried to talk to him. He didn't respond. Just stood there until he fell apart. Fell apart? Like the cold made him brittle. When he collapsed, he shattered. Pieces of him everywhere. The school teacher's account was worse. She'd seen a child, 8 years old, died of starvation in mid-December. The teacher had helped carry the body to the collection point outside the school. I saw her a week later, in the schoolyard, just standing by the swings where she used to play. It was -35 that night. I went to her. I said her name. Nothing. I touched her shoulder, and it was like touching stone, frozen completely through. Then she turned and walked toward the school entrance, her classroom. She stopped at the door and collapsed. Anya asked the question she'd asked everyone. Are you absolutely certain it was the same child? I taught her for 2 years. Yes, I'm certain. By January, Anya had documented 23 cases, all consistent, all impossible. She should have reported them, should have compiled the data and submitted it to the medical board. But she'd heard what happened to Volkov. Heard the whispers about other witnesses who'd spoken too openly. Some reassigned, some disappeared entirely. The NKVD didn't like talk of the supernatural. Didn't fit the Soviet materialist worldview. Couldn't be explained by science, therefore couldn't exist. So she kept her notes hidden, conducted her interviews in secret, and waited. She didn't have to wait long. On January 28, 1942, the temperature dropped to -42, the coldest night of the siege. That was the night Anya stopped being an investigator and became a witness. January 28th, 16 hours on shift. Anya's hands were numb, her vision blurring at the edges. She'd eaten her ration 12 hours ago, 60 grams of bread. Her stomach had stopped hurting 2 months back. Now there was just emptiness. The walk home was 3 kilometers. She'd made it 1,000 times, knew every corner, every building, every place where bodies accumulated. Tonight there were more than usual. The cold did that. -42. People froze in their beds, in their apartments, on the street between one step and the next. The hospital hallway had 43 bodies when she left. She'd counted them reflexively, the way you'd count stairs. One of them she recognized. Sergei Dimitrov, age 51, admitted 4 days ago with advanced starvation. Cardiac arrest at 4:17 a.m. on January 25th. She'd pronounced him dead herself. We checked his pulse twice to be certain. Nothing. She'd helped move him to the hallway when the morgue filled up. He'd been wearing a brown coat, patched at the elbows. She remembered because she'd thought about taking it. The dead didn't need coats, and it was warmer than hers, but couldn't bring herself to do it. That coat was gone now. Anya stopped walking, stared at the space where Dimitrov should have been. Body-shaped impression in the frost. That was all. She looked down the hallway, counted again. 42 bodies, 1 missing. Someone had moved him. That was the logical explanation. Someone had finally come to collect the dead. Except no one was collecting anymore. Hadn't been for weeks. Too many bodies. Not enough living. She should have left. Should have gone home. Instead, she went outside. The courtyard was empty, white with snow and moonlight and the dark shapes of bodies arranged like furniture. She knew this landscape, knew which ones had been here for days, which for weeks. Knew them by position, by clothing, by the way the snow had drifted against them. Then she saw the footprints, bare feet. The impressions were too clear, too specific. Toes, heel, arch, crossing the courtyard toward the street. She followed them. They led north on Litany Prospect. 1 foot in front of the other, perfectly spaced, like someone walking with absolute purpose. But the spacing was wrong. Too stiff, too regular. No natural variation in the stride. Anya's medical mind cataloged it automatically. Gait abnormality, muscular rigidity, neurological impairment. Except none of those explained footprints from a dead man. She walked faster, and the prints continued for 2 blocks. 3. The cold was knifing through her coat now, but she didn't feel it. Couldn't feel anything except the need to know. Then she saw him. Dimitrov was standing in front of an apartment building. Number 47. She knew it. She'd lived on this street before the war. He was facing the entrance, one hand outstretched toward the door. The same position he died in, reaching, always reaching. Anya stopped 10 meters away. He wasn't moving, just standing. Frost covered his skin, thick and white like paint. His eyes were open but glazed over with ice. His mouth was slightly open. No breath came out. no vapor in the brutal cold, nothing that indicated life. She took a step closer. Her medical training pushed through the fear. Observe, document, understand. His skin was blue-gray, frozen tissue. She could see it even from this distance. The way frostbite turned flesh dark, then black. His bare feet were nearly black, his fingers too. The coat was gone. She'd been right about that. But his clothes were the same shirt, the same trousers. Dimitrov? Her voice cracked the silence like a gunshot. He didn't respond, didn't blink. The frost on his eyes didn't melt. She moved closer. 5 meters now. Can you hear me? Nothing. 3 meters. She could see the ice crystals on his eyelashes. Could see that his chest wasn't moving. No rise and fall, no breathing. She reached out and touched his shoulder. The cold burned her fingers even through her glove. His body was rigid, not stiff like a corpse left out overnight. Rigid like frozen meat, solid. When she pushed gently, he didn't sway, didn't give. He was locked in place, and then his head turned. The sound froze her blood. Ice cracking, bones grinding. His neck rotated 30 degrees, and his frosted eyes pointed at her. Not looking, pointing. There was no consciousness behind them, no recognition, nothing human. Anya stepped back. Her heart was hammering so hard she could hear it. Dimitrov's arm moved. The reaching hand lowered, mechanical and slow, until it touched the door handle. His fingers wrapped around it. The motion was deliberate, intentional. He was trying to go inside. "You're dead," Anya whispered. "You died 4 days ago. I checked. You had no pulse, no breathing. You were dead." He pulled on the door. It didn't open, locked. He pulled again. Same result. No frustration, no emotion. Just repeated attempts, like a machine stuck in a loop. Anya circled around him, forced herself to observe. His feet had cracked from the walk. She could see splits in the frozen flesh, but no blood. Nothing fluid, everything solid ice. His joints moved without bending. The knees stayed locked, the elbows stiff. This was impossible. Every piece of medical knowledge she had said this couldn't happen. The dead don't move, they don't walk, they don't try to go home. But he was here, doing exactly that. She stood there for 10 minutes, maybe 15, watching him pull the door handle with mechanical repetition, watching him fail and try again, over and over. Then he stopped. His hand released the handle. His arm dropped to his side, and he collapsed. Not fell, collapsed, like a building coming down. His legs gave way, his torso tilted, and when he hit the ground, the impact shattered him. His frozen arm broke away from his shoulder. His head rolled. Pieces of him scattered across the ice. Anya knelt beside the remains, pulled off her glove and touched his neck where it should have had a pulse. Frozen solid, completely through. No warmth, no blood flow, nothing. He'd been dead the entire time. But she'd watched him walk 3 blocks, watched him try to go inside, watched him try to go home. She gathered the pieces of his coat, found it nearby, discarded, checked the pockets. Inside was a key. Number 47, apartment 12, his home. Dimitrov had walked home to die, except he'd already been dead. Anya sat on the frozen steps until sunrise, staring at the pieces of the impossible scattered at her feet. Anya didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dimitrov's frozen hand reaching for the door. Heard the sound of ice cracking when his head turned. She went back to the hospital at dawn, pulled his file. Cause of death, cardiac arrest secondary to starvation. Time of death, 4:17 a.m., January 25th. She'd signed it herself, her handwriting, her certification, dead. Medically, legally, definitively dead. She pulled 6 more files. The bodies that had gone missing from the hallway over the past 3 weeks. All of them had one thing in common. They'd frozen post-mortem. The hospital was barely heated. Bodies left in the hallway dropped to ambient temperature within hours. At -30, -35, that meant frozen solid. The ones who died warm, fever, infection, internal bleeding, none of them had gone missing. Only the frozen ones. Anya started a new notebook, hid it under the floorboard in the supply room, listed every case she could verify. Date, time of death, temperature, location of body, location where witnessed walking. By February 3rd, she had 31 documented cases. She showed the notebook to Dr. Kasparov. Only him. He was the only one she trusted. They met in the basement. He read through her notes twice, lips moving silently. When he looked up, his face was gray. "This is dangerous, Anya." "I know. I don't mean the research. I mean what you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm documenting observations. Observations of dead people walking." He closed the notebook. "The NKVD will call this defeatist propaganda, anti-Soviet mysticism. They'll say you're trying to undermine morale." "Then help me find a scientific explanation." He was quiet for a long moment. "What if there isn't one?" "There's always an explanation." "Is there?" He opened the notebook again, pointed to a specific entry. This one. February 1st. Witness saw a woman walk from Haymarket Square to Moika River, 4 kilometers, in -37 temperature. The woman had been dead for 6 days. You examined her yourself afterward. Frozen completely through. No cellular activity possible. But she walked 4 kilometers to her apartment building. "Residual nerve impulses," Anya said. "Electrical activity in the brain can persist briefly after death. Maybe the extreme cold preserves it longer. Maybe. For 6 days? Over 4 kilometers? Navigating streets, avoiding obstacles, finding one specific building out of thousands?" Kasparov shook his head. "That's not nerve impulses. That's purpose. That's memory. Memory requires a functioning brain." "Then explain it. Explain how they know where to go." She couldn't. That was the problem. Every case followed the same pattern. The bodies walked to places that mattered. Homes, workplaces, a mother to her children's school, a soldier to his barracks, a baker to his shop. They didn't wander. They went somewhere. The question that haunted her was simple and impossible. What part of them remembered? She started visiting the sites, documented 3 cases personally. The first was a man named Alexei Sokolov. Died January 30th at the bread distribution center. Heart failure. She found him 2 days later standing outside his apartment on Sadovaya Street and watched him for 20 minutes. He stood at the door, hand on the handle, pulling repeatedly. The lock was frozen. He couldn't get in. But he kept trying until he collapsed and shattered. Inside his apartment, she checked later, was his wife's body. She'd died 2 weeks earlier. He'd been trying to get back to her. The second was a child, 9 years old. Name, Katya Morozova. Died February 4th. Starvation. Anya found her 3 nights later in a schoolyard on Fontanka. The girl stood by the swings, one hand gripping the chain, frozen in place, not moving, just standing there like she was waiting for recess to end. Anya approached her. "Katya?" No response. The girl's eyes were frosted over. Ice crystals covered her face like a veil. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. But then, Slowly, the girl's head tilted, not toward Anya, but toward the school building, toward a specific window on the second floor. Her classroom, Anya learned later, where she'd sat every day before the siege. The girl took one step toward the building, then collapsed mid-stride, shattering across the ice. The third case broke something in Anya. A woman, late 30s. She died in the hospital on February 8th. Anya had been there, had held her hand as she went. The woman's last words were about her daughter. "Tell Masha I tried. Tell her I tried to come home." 5 days later, Anya saw her on Nevsky Prospect, walking that same stiff-legged walk, heading west. Anya followed her for 6 blocks. The woman stopped outside an orphanage, stood at the gate, frozen hands gripping the iron bars. Anya checked the roster later. Masha Lebedeva, age 6, had been registered there in November. Her mother had been trying to reach her, but Masha had died 3 weeks earlier. The records showed it clearly. January 18th. Starvation. The mother was trying to reach a daughter who was already dead. Anya sat in the archives that night, surrounded by files and death certificates, and asked herself the question she'd been avoiding. If the cold preserved something, some electrical impulse, some fragment of consciousness, how long could it last? Days? Weeks? What if it lasted until spring? What if, when the ice melted and the bodies thawed, that fragment woke up inside rotting flesh? She closed the files, locked her notebook away. Some questions, she realized, were better left unanswered, but the bodies kept walking, and the reports kept coming. By mid-February, she'd documented 47 cases. That's when the NKVD came for her. They came for her on February 19th. 2 NKVD officers. They didn't knock, just walked into the hospital supply room where she was inventorying morphine. "Dr. Sokolova, you'll come with us." Not a question. Never a question with them. The interrogation room was in the basement of the big house on Litani. She'd walked past it 1,000 times. Never thought she'd be inside. The room was cold, colder than outside somehow. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, a table, 2 chairs. The officer across from her was maybe 40, thin like everyone else, but his eyes were sharp, alert, well-fed enough to stay dangerous. He slid her notebook across the table. "Explain this." Her stomach dropped. She'd hidden it under the floorboard. Someone had talked, or someone had been watching. Medical observations, cases of corpses walking. He opened it to a marked page. 47 documented incidents of the dead, rising and moving through the city. Is that your claim? Those are witness testimonies. I was documenting defeatist propaganda. No, I was trying to find a scientific explanation for. There is no explanation, because it didn't happen. He leaned forward. "Do you understand what you're doing? The panic this kind of talk creates? The damage to morale?" "I'm a doctor. I document what I observe." "You observed corpses walking?" She hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. "Yes." He wrote something in his own notebook. "Describe it." So she did. Told him about Dimitrov, about the frozen children and the mother at the orphanage gates, about the patterns she'd found, the temperatures, the destinations, all of it. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he closed his notebook. "Hunger psychosis, well-documented phenomenon, visual and auditory hallucinations brought on by extreme malnutrition. You're a doctor. You know this." These weren't hallucinations. Multiple witnesses saw. Multiple starving witnesses experiencing the same delusion. Mass hysteria, also well documented. He slid a paper across the table. You'll sign this statement. It confirms that your observations were the result of exhaustion and insufficient nutrition, that you recognize your error and will cease spreading these rumors. They're not rumors. Sign it, Dr. Sokolova. And if I don't? He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Your husband, Victor, he's been absent from his factory work for 6 weeks. Dereliction of duty during the wartime is a serious offense. Well, we could investigate, or we could overlook it. Your choice. Anya's hands shook. Victor had stopped going to the factory after Mikhail died, had barely left the apartment. She'd been too consumed with her own grief to notice when he stopped functioning entirely. She signed the paper. Good. Now, you will destroy any copies of these notes. You will cease discussing this topic with anyone. You will inform us if you hear others spreading similar stories. Are we clear? Yes. One more thing. He collected her notebook. Several of your witnesses have already been relocated for psychiatric evaluation. Others have been reassigned to labor battalions outside the city. If you value your position at the hospital, you'll forget their names. She understood. They'd disappeared, or would soon. The official explanation went out within days. Posted in hospitals, read on the radio, printed in what remained of the newspapers. Reports of ambulatory deceased are the result of mass hallucination brought on by extreme hunger. Citizens experiencing such visions should report for medical evaluation. Further spread of these rumors will be considered defeatist activity. The message was clear. See something, report yourself. Talk about it, disappear. The reports stopped. Not because the phenomena stopped. Anya heard whispers, saw the fear in people's eyes when they passed certain streets at night. But no one dared speak of it anymore. The last documented case she knew of was April 4th, 1942. A nurse named Svetlana saw one near the Fontanka, told Anya in whispers. Anya told her to forget it, to never mention it again. By May, the temperature was rising. Bodies that had been frozen for months began to thaw. The smell of decay returned to the city. The death carts started moving again, collecting what winter had preserved, and the walking stopped. Whether because the cold no longer held them, or because the NKVD had successfully silenced every witness, Anya would never know. She burned her copies of the notebook, stopped asking questions, kept her head down, and survived. But she never forgot what she'd seen. January 27th, 1944. The siege ended. 872 days. The official death toll was 632,000. The real number was closer to 1 million, maybe more. No one would ever know exactly. Too many bodies, too many graves, too many people who simply vanished into the cold. Anya survived. So did Victor, barely. They left Leningrad in 1945, moved to Moscow, never spoke about what they'd seen. She became a psychiatrist, specialized in treating siege survivors. Many of them reported the same visions: bodies walking, frozen faces at windows, sounds in the cold. She listened, took notes, never told them she believed them. The reports stayed classified for 47 years. When the Soviet archives opened in 1991, researchers found them. 47 official NKVD incident reports, all from winter 1941 to 42, all describing the same phenomena, all stamped defeatist delusion and buried. But there were details. Photographs of footprints in snow, barefoot, frozen tissue, medical examinations of bodies found in impossible locations. Witness testimony from NKVD officers, doctors, party officials. People who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by reporting what they'd seen. All of it consistent, all of it impossible. Anya's copied notes were discovered in 2003, hidden in her daughter's attic. She'd kept them after all. Her final journal entry, dated March 15, 1986, 3 months before she died. I am 73 years old. I have been a doctor for 52 years. I know what death looks like. I know what I saw in Leningrad. The cold preserved them. Something else moved them. Whether residual nerve impulses, or fragments of consciousness, or something we have no words for, I cannot say. But I know this. In extreme cold, extreme hunger, extreme death, the rules break. And some of those bodies walked home. In Leningrad, St. Petersburg now, people still report things on the coldest winter nights. Figures moving stiffly through the streets near Piskaryovskoye Cemetery, where 500,000 are buried in mass graves. Footprints that appear and vanish, shapes standing at locked doors. Maybe they're homeless, maybe they're shadows, maybe they're memories frozen into the city itself. Or maybe, when it gets cold enough, when it drops to -40 like it did in 1942, the dead still remember where home is, and some of them still try to get there.